Welcome to the second of our alumni series, where we will be interviewing past music scholars, finding out what they did at university and where they are now. So I'd like to introduce you to Lucia, who is one of our past music presidents, and she was extremely engaged with music throughout her time in her degree. So Lucia, can you tell us a bit about what you studied at Queen Mary?
Yeah, so I studied global health. So it was actually the first year they ever did the global health BSc at Queen Mary. So it's a bit of a guinea pig, but I did that at Barts and QM. So it was kind of across both.
And so you started that back in 2014, I believe, which is the same year that Paul actually joined our music department. So what did music look like at Queen Mary when you first joined?
So I didn't know that Paul was new like me. I thought that, Paul was very established and the Queen Mary Music Society was also established. So what it looked like to me was an orchestra, a choir, a few bands, jazz band, jam group, chamber ensemble as well. And that's kind of what it looked like. And all I knew is that I wanted to get stuck into something. And I was a bit apprehensive at the beginning because I did so much music in my secondary school education that it kind of took over my life. And I didn't know whether I wanted that to happen again at university. But after about a week of apprehension and then going to a choir rehearsal, I realized I need this and my life is so much fuller with it.
I think that's a really common theme we found from people that we've interviewed who are current students, that actually they grew up having so much music in their lives that when they came to university, although they'd made the decision to not study music as their degree, but actually it goes hand in hand. And the idea of going to a university and not having any music there and not having that in their lives, I think everybody has been in the same position and decided that they need it. You started off with choir and you were in an orchestra and chamber ensemble as well. When did you decide that you wanted to get more involved with the committee? So we've established that music is really important to you, and we know that it was important throughout your time at university. So you graduated in 2017, and I know that you had a bit of an exciting time after that. Do you want to tell us a bit about what happened after you left?
Yeah, sure. So now kind of nearly 4 years ago, I graduated. And then I did a double master's in public administration and government. And that was with Peking University in China and then LSE in London. So I spent a year in Beijing directly after graduating QM and then a year at LSE. And those 2 years were kind of also a crazy whirlwind and roller coaster. And then after that, I've now landed myself at a executive search and a leadership advisory firm as a business analyst called Egon, and it's Egon Zehnder, where I'm kind of really enjoying learning about this elusive private sector that everyone talks about, which I had no exposure to previously in my academic work. So that's kind of this roller coaster that I've been on in the past 4 years. And yeah, music, I think, has always been an integral part of it, even though it may have taken more of a backseat because I'm not so much involved in the leadership of it, but I've always been involved. And even in China, I wasn't so much involved in orchestras or choirs as such at the university, but there was this kind of open mic night down the road at a pub that, where we used to live. And me and my flatmate used to just take a guitar and go and do some like open mic sessions. And that release that I had doing that was another just kind of journey in my musical development because I'd never really done open mic before or done that kind of more casual music, I guess. So that was really exciting. And to do it in China as well was just a bit mad, but it was a lot of fun. And then at LSE kind of just got involved with choir again because I just needed that outlet of community as well and just creativity that's somewhat different to everything else.
So can you tell us a bit about when and how your interest in music began?
I'm not sure if there was a particular point that I can remember of when it was, but I hear a lot of different stories from my parents about when I was a kid. And one very early story that my mom always tells is that I think I must have been about 3, and it was like one of those outdoor fountain park things where, you know, the fountains out of the ground and they spurt water, kind of going to music, and there's this kind of light show that goes with it, and all the kids are running in and out and, you know, having fun with the water and playing with the lights. But then they played Beethoven's Fifth as part of the music to go with the lights and the water, and I just burst out crying. I just stood still and started crying because I think I was so moved by the music, or just so scared by it. And I think that's when my mum realized, oh, this kid has a weird connection to music, and maybe we should, you know, explore that. And I think after that, we moved to Hong Kong when I was 4, and it just so happened that the flat that we moved into had a piano, and you could not get me off the piano stool. So I think that's kind of when my parents decided, yeah, we should probably invest in some lessons so that she doesn't sound horrific all the time, just bashing keys. And that's kind of, I think, when my more formal pursuit of music started. And then when I was in junior school, I decided to take up clarinet. And that kind of then shaped the rest of my musical career, or career quote unquote, when I joined secondary school. And that's when I really made a lot of active decisions to join bands and join groups, join choirs, join orchestras. Anything I could get myself into, I was trying to get into. So I kind of filled up my whole free time, lunch times, break times, after school sessions, all were filled with music.
You've told us a lot about your musical journey from starting off early in life to university. But can you maybe think of what your most memorable musical experience was? Is there anything that jumps out to you?
I mean, in all honesty, every single performance for me is just a crazy memory, and a highlight memory. And I love the excitement and the anticipation that kind of builds up before a performance, and then the performance itself is kind of just a blur, and you're doing what you have to do, and you're making the most of what it is. And then afterwards, there's this huge release and kind of euphoria in a way. It's very strange, this high that you get after a performance. So I think every performance for me is really exciting and a highlight. But one in particular, I don't know if it's the most memorable, but it's one that makes me laugh. Me and 2 friends, we had this clarinet trio at school, and we went to Woking Music Festival, and it's just a small kind of local festival. And, you know, we were these 3, I guess, scrappy kids who were just playing some jazz pieces that our teacher had put together, nothing too fancy. And we were going against these very classically trained kind of small quartets and groups that were very, you know, straight-laced. And what we thought is that, you know what, we're just going to have fun with this, and we're going to take off our shoes, and we're going to play from like the soles of our feet, and really like put our all into this, and just give it a big performance.
You touched on the kind of feeling of euphoria when you finish a concert, and I think that's something that is so apt. And I tried to describe that once to someone who isn't a musician, and I just didn't know how to describe it in a way that they would get it, because it really is, you know, you're all playing together and you can feel the music, and you're sharing it with everyone in that moment. And I think if you're not a musician, I'm not sure that there is anything comparable at all, because it is such a unique experience.
It's so interesting you bring that up, because I was reflecting also about how music has shaped me and who I am at the moment. And also the work that I do at the moment is a lot to do with coaching and development of leaders. And we use psychometric tools to kind of delve into that. And we had opportunities to do our own psychometric tests and kind of debriefs. And one of the areas that we explore is how you work with others, and, you know, how you communicate with others. And just through my reflections of that, and through the conversations I was having with some of the coaches, I realized that music really plays a massive role in that, because unlike sport, which I think is something slightly different, in sport, you're actively communicating with words and with sounds through your mouth, like just through your mouth, yelling at people, pass it to me, give it here, you know, go long, whatever it is, you're using words to communicate with one another. But in music, and particularly in an orchestra or a choir or a band, you're having to intuitively listen to each other and adapt oneself to one another without speaking in the moment. Of course, you have a conductor that you have to listen to and trust full-heartedly, but then there's also this kind of unspoken connection that you have with the musicians next to you. And I think that's, for me, it's an invaluable skill that I now have in my professional career, where I'm able to be intuitive with the teams around me, and I'm able to listen and adapt myself without speaking per se, or being too directive. And I think that's something that's quite abstract, I think, about music. I'm not sure if it's something that resonates with you at all.
Completely. I mean, absolutely everything you're saying, I thought, this is so true, this is so apt. And it's something that I think, Paul and I have discussed before, but actually those people who are really involved in music, whether it be in a choir or a band or an orchestra, the transferable skills that they're getting from being part of that are invaluable. And so many of the people we've had in committee roles have either been good leaders when they've started or grown to be good leaders because they're relying on those skills that they've got as a musician. So I think it's a really, really interesting area. And we know that university is so much more than just your degree, but actually something like music, which is not just your degree, it's another thing you've got as well, is providing you with even more of those opportunities. So we're coming to the end of our interview now, but there's a very important part which we need to cover. So please, can I ask you to introduce the 3 pieces of music that are very important to you?
So the 3 pieces of music that are important to me at any given time kind of changes all the time. So this is just right now, in this moment, I think the 3 pieces that resonate with me in this stage in life. And they're quite eclectic, so please bear with me. The first one is Mozart's Requiem. And I think right now, the reason why it resonates so much with me is because of this. I mean, it's full of emotion, just kind of an emotional roller coaster in itself. And you feel, I mean, I've spoken about emotional release before with music, and I feel like just listening to that almost gives kind of 30% of what you would get if you were actually, performing something. And for me right now, it's also very special because it's actually the last thing that I performed in front of a live audience. So it's kind of a big memory as well, and just thinking about how can we get back to that time. And then my second piece is a little bit different from maybe what we would do at QM Orchestra and other QM groups, but it's actually Beyonce's Homecoming tour. And the full album is on Spotify, and there's a film about it on Netflix. But the reason why it's so important to me at the moment is, I mean, A, I'm a big Beyonce fan, but B, I think it's a perfect representation of what music should be, which is an expression and celebration of culture, of emotion, of, bringing people together. And particularly in the year that we've had this year, not just with, a global pandemic, but also with the social issues that have come to light. I think it's such an important celebration, particularly of Black culture. And then my last piece would be Don't Get Around Much Anymore. And there's a particular recording by Louis Armstrong and Duke Ellington that I quite like. And the reason why this is important to me right now, I mean, I think the name is quite apt as we stand, that we don't get around much anymore. But another part of it is that jazz was kind of this ongoing story in my musical kind of background. My dad loved jazz, and a lot of my bonding experience with my dad is going to jazz clubs. And it's really kind of exciting to me that soon we will be able to go back to jazz clubs and, sip on a glass of wine and just listen to music late at night in London. And that's something that I'm really excited to get back to. So I think that's kind of why that's my last piece.
Those are 3 really, really great and really interesting suggestions. So thank you so much for sharing that. And also thank you so much for agreeing to do this interview. It's so exciting to see kind of how your whole musical career has developed so far. And we're all going to be very excited to see where that takes you.
It's been my pleasure.